started then. Okay, hi everyone. My name's Kunbi Tinuoye, and I'm the CEO and founder of UrbanGeekz, a technology blog focused on a multicultural, diverse audience. And today's session is on Black tech talent pipelines. And we have three amazing panelists who are from organizations and ecosystem leaders from NSBE, BDPA, and Opportunity Hub. They're going to discuss their respective organizations and how they work to develop the current and next generation of Black tech leaders. So first and foremost, I'm going to ask you all, start with you, Rodney, to introduce yourselves. And for those people that don't know, tell us a little bit about your organizations.
Good. Well, good afternoon, Kunbi. It's good to see you.
Yes.
I'm excited to be here this afternoon as well. So in 2013, my wife, who's with me today, and I, rather than start a philanthropic organization, started Opportunity Hub. And just to give a little context, OHUB and its mission was really in response to the experiences that I experienced going back a decade earlier as a Black tech founder and having to raise venture capital, which we were one of the first three to successfully do it in the country. There was Omar Wasu at Black Planet, you might remember Omar, and Clarence Wooten at Venture Cafe, and myself in Atlanta with Multicast Media Technologies and Streaming Faith. And so just basically navigating the technology startup and venture ecosystem, which is often not talked about in terms of a career pathway. You know, when you start something from nothing and you build it, you fundraise for it. And in our case, that company was fortunate enough to be acquired. And then you sort of rinse and repeat that. And after a while, founders and investors, we see the gaps, particularly in terms of how to navigate this ecosystem successfully. And so in response to that, we started, Opportunity Hub. How could we really platform and productize, our processes and kind of make these pathways available to primarily Black Americans, but it's now expanded beyond that. Give you a few metrics and I'll conclude. So we've to date helped over 1,200 students get their first tech internship or first career. That's primarily been through a program called HBCU at South by Southwest. We've graduated over 500 students from our software engineering boot camps, cybersecurity specialist boot camps, and now technology sales boot camps. And we also have a pre-acceleration incubation, and we hold investments in over 80 different companies now through various LP investments that we've also made in Black founders as well.
Wonderful. Congratulations for the work that you do. It's amazing. Okay, Janeen, your name, who you are, and just a little bit about your organization as well.
Sure. My name is Janeen Uzzell. I am the CEO of NSBE, the National Society of Black Engineers. Happy Friday, everyone. Thanks for hanging out, end of the day. So, NSBE is the largest student entity of Black tech talent and thought leadership. I am a product of NSBE, class of quite a while ago. No problem with that, but I think that my story and what brought me back to NSBE was certainly recalling the impact that it had on my life as a student at North Carolina A&T. I'm a mechanical engineer by training, spent the bulk of my career working at General Electric in healthcare technologies in Africa. So I spent most of my time living overseas. And then I came back and ran Wikipedia for a couple of years, and that was very interesting in the world of disinformation and the election and the Black Lives Matter crisis, and just ensuring that knowledge and information are certainly as free and equitable as the platform claims that it is. And then NSBE reached out, and actually NSBE didn't reach out. My former chief diversity officer reached out to me and said, NSBE's looking to build a new leadership model. So I'm the first CEO, and we will be 49 years old as an organization in March. And this is important for so many reasons. One, because we are a bootstrapped Black organization that was started by students at Purdue. And we're going to be 49, so yay NSBE. And we've grown from being an organization that launched in a small area with a small community of people. 4 of our 6 founders are still alive, to being an organization with over 700 chapters across the United States and internationally. And at any given moment, we can have up to 20,000 plus students. And just the volume of people that we've graduated in NSBE history, unfortunately, we don't even know that number, but we're working on bringing it all back together by the time we turn 50. And so our goal is to ensure that in the continuum of STEM, all the way from the 3rd grade to your graduation, that we are making STEM relevant, fun, entertaining, that we're keeping a connection for what happens to our students around the 5th and the 6th grade when they're likely to turn away from STEM, when being a nerd is not as cool as I might make it look. And then ensuring that they get the money to graduate and that they have the jobs that are transforming the world, because that's what we need at the end of the day, is a community of Black technologists that are working in the area of technology to change the user experience, the way products are designed, and the way that they're developed. So that is, that's what NSBE is, and that's what I'm working on.
Thank you. Timothy? Yes, say your name and a little bit about your organization.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good
I'm Timothy Butts. I am the Vice President of Operations for BDPA, and our mission is to build talented tech talent that's diverse, and we've been doing it since 1975. How did we come to be? That's really the story. Earl Pace, at the time a computer programmer, walked into a meeting at work, found that he was the only person of color in the room, very frustrated, a lot of people turning away from him, et cetera, and said, I wonder if others that are trying to break into this new technology thing are experiencing what I'm experiencing. This was back in Philadelphia. So he called a couple of his friends in the area, called a couple of his friends across the country, and they found a lot of similar experiences where they were feeling on the outside. Not on the outside looking in solely, but they were learning, but they didn't have a means to communicate. So by creating a group where he could talk to others, take that extra step and actually say, what are the core things we each need to learn to do, and how can we bring in other people? They first founded the Philadelphia chapter of BDPA. By doing that, they set up a model, and they began making phone calls to their friends across the country, which started from the ground up, all these chapters that have been long-standing ever since. So from that building, from that philosophy, and from that methodology, that's what BDPA is today. We have pillars of learning where we basically take a person who's at the beginning of their career, whether they know they want to be in IT or not, they now can get mentors and sponsors and then raise up throughout the ranks. And we now use over 10,000 people who've been alumni of our organization in our process to double back and be those young leaders to keep us going. Hence, we've been around almost 50 years.
Wonderful.
So we're looking forward to going back to Philadelphia for our 50th anniversary in a couple of years, and then having a momentous occasion, because Earl Pace, prior to him passing away this past January, he called myself and other past leaders and said, I need you to come back in the fold, I need you to take a leadership position, make sure we have sustainability. Hence, that's why I'm here. I really buy into that, because I always invest my time, my talent, and my treasure in what I believe in. Hence, that's why I'm here. But a little bit about me and how it all ties in. So I'm a person who builds incubators and also does investment into small business, nonprofits, but also ideas. I work with the Texas Medical Center Innovation Institute, TMCX, TMCI. Through that, we basically will have physicians approach us and say, I had an idea, we were doing a process, and if there had only been a tool that did this, if there had only been something that did that. So we then take those ideas and I advise them on that, and then we're able to run with it and either find people to invest money in it or find other ways to get some pilot programs in the various hospitals around Houston. Through that, we're able to launch millions of dollars of money to invest back in and keep that cyclical piece going. So I proudly brought that expertise to BDPA when I came back and said, hey, you guys helped me when I was in grad school. I'm a lifelong member. I've invested in, and I want to continue that synergy. So that's why I'm here. That's why our organization is going to continue to grow. I'm so proud to work with them. And I'm so proud to work with all these guys too, because it's when the flock flies together that we all fly farther and we all fly better.
Yeah. Amen.
Okay, so I really want to educate the audience and our online viewers as well, really about how people can get involved, like on a practical level. So let me start with you, Janeen. How does somebody get involved? Can you sort of talk people through that? And I'd love you to all sort of explain how, is there an application process? How does it all work?
So most importantly, NSBE.org is where you can find your information. But our programs, as I mentioned, range from the 3rd grade all the way to postgraduate. And so if you have a young person, a child, we have a summer engineering experience for kids that is funded by our partners, where we do 3-week commitments, and we're taking students through a journey of STEM where they're learning to code and program. And because we're writing the curriculum this year, we taught empathy and engineering, social justice and technology, ways to solve problems for Black people in tech. So these are great opportunities. We've been virtual for the past 2 years because of the pandemic, but we hope to actually be on a campus again this year. So that's our summer engineering experience for kids that seek. We have pre-college initiative programs and NSBE junior programs that are happening in various high schools. Kind of think of it like the Girl Scouts or the Boy Scouts, where you would have your chapter meetings and get badges and things like that, except it's for projects in engineering and STEM. And so if you're interested in a high school program, many of those are sponsored by members of the Divine Nine. They have various chapters that host them, the Links, and other places like that. And then at all of our universities, you can just go and join a chapter, because we most likely have one at each university, and if not, there's guidelines on how to start a chapter. But the tribe of NSBE on a college campus is probably one of the strongest ways for you to maneuver through your engineering program. And then the actual organization itself has professional members beyond that, and lifetime members like myself and others.
Okay, thank you. Rodney, so how can someone get involved in Opportunity Hub?
Absolutely. So our website is www.opportunityhub.co. We've done, I'm kind of approach it from a framework perspective. So our membership to Opportunity Hub is open to anyone, because we're seeing, particularly, as we accelerate into the 4th Industrial Revolution, we're seeing so many people from various backgrounds that may have undergraduate, graduate, or PhD, doctoral level experience, but we're also seeing people coming right out of high school and going right into careers because they're self-teaching themselves Python or Java or learning technical sales. And so if we're actually going to solve for like the gap, and I know that gap in jobs is kind of shifting a little bit with the macroeconomic climate we have, but if we're actually going to start addressing a deeper conversation, I know we've talked about this a lot over the last decade, is how through technology do we actually disrupt the racial wealth gap, either individually or collectively as a community. Then that means we have to have sort of an aligned agenda to get as many Black people as we know into permanent, high-paying career pathways, but also starting their own high-growth companies and or investing and advising those high-growth companies as well. And so 3 years ago, we worked with the Federal Reserve System. I was on their Community Economic Development Board, and we were assigned to work with the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City. And Dr. Dale Gines and I, we created a framework for building inclusive innovation, entrepreneurship, and investment ecosystems in communities of color. I want to take this opportunity to insert the importance of also policy activism beyond you voting. And so right now, when you're asking what can you do, with the passing, of course, of the American Recovery Plan Act, the Infrastructure Bill, CHIPS, which includes tech hubs, Cybersecurity Opportunity Act, State Small Business Credit Initiative, those are at least 5 federally funded programs that are being assigned to agencies. One, as organizations, we should be collaborating together and going after this money, number one. Number two, you calling your congressman and your senator and asking them, are some of those resources going to Black ecosystem building organizations like the ones on this stage, but also going to HBCUs, MSIs, minority serving institutions as well. Your voice matters because your one call to your congressional office could have them have, you know, an intern call a college or call a program and say, hey, did you know this was going on? We got included in a $50 million Build Back Better grant through Commerce in New Orleans because someone reached out to us and said, hey, I happen to know what OHUB does, right? And so that open sharing of information, I think a lot of times, you know, as Black people who have instances of success, we sometimes kind of isolate ourselves or insulate ourselves because we don't want to mess up a good thing. It's like, I know somebody else pushed the door open and y'all let me slide in, but I'm gonna nudge it back at least for a decade so I can get all I can get. We can't afford that anymore. Right. We need y'all to bust those doors open, and y'all need to bring as many folk as y'all can through the doors, either through hiring, but also through supplier diversity, through impact with your giving to organizations like ourselves or contracts to organizations like ourselves. So there's like a full stack approach all on assault that I think as Black people, we've got to take just to ensure that our children and our children's children will be equitably represented in the future.
Okay, thank you, Rodney. Timothy?
Sure. So how can people get engaged with BDPA? So you can get engaged with us through sponsorship, through mentorship, through partnership, but also coming to speak with some of the people who are members of our organization. Much like we're all fellowshipping, a lot of ships, right? Much like we're fellowshipping together and then doing networking, we often find, as you both mentioned, so many stones go unturned because we don't have the right conversations or we're not willing to open up about what's really on our mind. So how can a person get involved with BDPA? You get involved in a formal fashion as a member. People can get involved at a student level, and that's all the way down to very young. You can come into any one of our pillar organizations and academies. We can teach you cybersecurity, we can teach you all these data and all these different things, different pillars. But coming in as a member, as a 1 year, multiple year, life member, etc., you can just come in and join in that fashion. But we also welcome people to just come in with new ideas. As a person who helps to coordinate our ongoing conferences, much like this great conference, when we have our conference, we're wanting people to come in and speak, give fresh ideas, etc. But likewise, we also want to advocate and make sure that we know and we are practicing collaboration. I'm proud to say that we have a collaboration with NSBE. Every 2 weeks, we have what's called Tech Talks. And when we do those Tech Talks, it's like a TED Talk. It's a person who's a specialist in a particular area, and we collaboratively share back and forth with NSBE. And it might be a Monday, it might be a Friday that person gets a phone call from us. We say, in a few weeks, we'd like you to do this. We have that conversation, build our community together, and then when that person comes to the stage and either goes on Zoom or comes to the conference, we know that they're engaged, and we know right then both organizations are in sync, right? If only we could do that with more of you. If your organizations aren't in sync, we ask you see us up here, go to our websites, bdpa.org, bdpa.org, and then by joining us in that fashion, you can learn more about what we've done in the past, but also let us know what you'd like to do. How can we help you put wheels on the bus? Because I'm sure there are ideas that you want to get done. We'd love to help you with that. So that's how you can get engaged with us.
Yeah. Thank you. So remind us then, obviously you're doing this work because I suppose in many ways it's mission driven. Remind us, what are some of the obstacles that young students of color or young people face to actually getting to this industry? And I'll start with you, Rodney. You're like, stare.
We have to peel back so many different layers. I think there's, you know, sometimes for the individual, there could be, you know, a lack of early exposure, just not knowing what they don't know, or perceiving that to be in tech, everyone has to be a software developer. And so some folks will say, oh no, I'm not into that, right? And it's just because of a lack of exposure. But let's say someone does get interested, then they've got to be exposed and kind of know where to go to the different membership organizations and the communities where they can be around like-minded people. Iron sharpens iron, right? And they're figuring it out, you know, as they go. And then, you know, once they get excited, the next thing is they are in community, but they really got to make sure that they've got the skills to properly engage depending on what track they're going. And some of the challenges that we're working with, you know, inside of MSIs and inside of some of our HBCUs is, you know, the pedagogy was created, you know, 30 years ago when folks were learning Fortran. Well, folks are not coding in Fortran anymore, right? Or COBOL. They're coding in R and Ruby and Python. And so, you know, when you invest your resources, you know, to go, you expect to also get, you know, the skills, you know, that will prepare you for your respective interests and your and career pathway. And so you really got to hack your career pathway like you got to hack life. You know, you got to do it all. And whatever environment you are in, you just got to kind of really keep pressing towards, like, until you put a demand on an institution. You know, we tell folks, put a demand on OHUB. If there's something that we're not delivering from a curriculum perspective, we'll go create it. We'll go figure out the resources. And a lot of our programs, which you know, being in Atlanta, were birthed out of, you know, some founders saying, you know, I don't know how to raise capital. Okay, great, let's do a fundraising, you know, certificate.
Yeah.
I get people now, we created a program with the Links Incorporated. I heard you mention the Links 3 years ago, where they made an investment in our venture fund. They had never done that before. And then we created a investment certificate. It was, at the time I was a visiting professor at the University of North Carolina, Keenan Flagler Business School in Duke. We brought Stanford in, and we literally created this certificate program to teach Black people, in this case, Black women, how to be angel investors and how to be venture capitalists and LPs in respective funds. So whether you're young or mature, it's really developing that confidence to just like keep pressing forward. And we try to encourage that in our social media and in our newsletter and to all of the people that we touch.
Okay. Any of you got any points to add?
I would say that from a generational perspective, we're just now in a position where I don't have children, but our children are now able to see someone that's working in tech. My parents were not in tech. They're, you know, I don't come from that kind of family, but my cousin was an engineer, which is why I'm an engineer. He was a mechanical engineer, I'm a mechanical engineer. I don't know that I would have had an opportunity to even experience that if it weren't in my family line, because we don't have, our students still don't have people that are encouraging them to study in this space. In fact, we're discouraged in many areas. I particularly am concerned about some of what's happening in the area of policy as it relates to technology for Black students. The California math law is currently working rigorously to remove courses like calculus from adjudicated communities because they think Black people just don't take calculus. Well, maybe we all don't, but some of us do. And if we don't take these classes, the likelihood that we'll ever study anything in engineering or technology is zero. And so I think that all of it is very strategic to pull us out of the system. And so there's the policy piece of it. There's the challenge of the Black STEM experience in general. It's uniquely different than what anyone else experiences. It costs us more money. It's difficult for us to receive that money. If in fact your loan process has to go through your parents, then there's a challenge with being able to have the collateral to be able to get that loan. I currently serve on President Biden's HBCU advisory committee, and we're working on getting our people out of debt. But just the process of what it means to get this education and how expensive it is, that's a challenge. And then many times once we do complete our curriculum, what it costs to stay in school, if you study technology, the labs, the different courses are very expensive, and it's all a detractor. These are all reasons that people are like, I probably shouldn't go that route. Even if you go the certification route, which I don't have a problem with at all. A lot of times in Black families, certifications aren't the same as what our parents had dreamed for us. Particularly those of you like myself that are first generation collegiate. My parents were just like, you're going to college, because no one in our family had. And so imagine being in a family like that and then coming back and saying, well, I'm not going to go to college, but I'm going to get this certification and do this work, which is a great way to enter into tech. But a lot of times we don't have the support. So they're conflicting, but all of them are reasons why it's difficult for us to be in this space. And then ultimately, what we're preparing young people and students and technologists for, when they get into the workplace, they're not successful because the workplace continues to disable us just through systemic racism in general.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, there is definitely systemic racism, and I like to say that there is leaky pipes, right? A lot of people will see programs for youth to get into STEM and STEAM, and you see a ton of kids will jump into it. But if the society is constantly making them doubt what their capabilities are, then that same preponderance of 50 people, in a few years, that number is dwindled down to maybe 15. And then when they hit college, and you have people putting doubt in their minds, even more drop away. I call those leaky pipes. Why do I call it leaky pipes? Because at the end of the day, employers want a pipeline of talent. Our role is to bring in diverse, talented technology professionals ready to hit the ground running. But if that whole pipeline has been leaky all the way, then that 50 people that started never even reached the finish line to be available to go and get full-time jobs, to go and start their own companies. How do we shore it up? One, you've both covered a lot of that because we know that those challenges exist. Things get inside of people's heads, policy, societal pressures, societal events. That's why it's vital when we have conferences like this that we talk, make very clear that there is a distinction that's part of the whole pie of life. You're going to have your education, but you also have to be able to balance the societal pressures around you as you're going through that education. It's up to us and all of you to help be that buffer when people get challenged and start to doubt their capability to try that new idea. Because if you're not reassuring them, if you're getting doubt in their minds and not providing resilience, then you're part of the problem. We have to be pipe fixers. And that's part of what we see ourselves as. And I challenge people to see what part they play in that whole ecosystem of making a pipeline of successful people to be ready to go start their own businesses or to go to work and really be technologists that they can be.
Okay, this is actually a question for me as a mum, actually, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this. So I'm a mum, you know, professional black woman, and I have school-aged children. And I feel that for me, there's this dilemma when I'm looking at the schools that I want my children to go to. There are two types of schools in my head. We have the schools that have predominantly black and brown kids, which are often failing schools, which are not, in my head, giving my kids the education that I want. Then we move to these, I suppose, predominantly white, affluent areas to get our kids a good education. Put my kids in those schools, fine, they get a great education, but they don't have any black or brown teachers or role models. Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts there? You know, two types of schools, great schools, no black teachers, especially black male teachers. I have two sons. And then the failing black schools. What does a parent do? And I know I didn't prepare you guys for this, but I'm just interested in your thoughts.
So I want everybody to go to black schools with black people, be black, be around. I mean, that's just me, it's my preference. I went to an all-white grammar school and an all-white, all-girls boarding school. And I was like, I gotta go. Because I didn't feel, I mean, I wasn't taught any kind of diverse curriculum except when I went to church, because I did go to black church. And I had a very, very militant older sister. She's about 16 years older than me. And, you know, she was like, fight the power. And so she was committed to me being at this school that my parents could have never afford to send me to. So I was proud to be there, but that's the same school that told me I shouldn't study engineering. It's also the same school that when I went there as a freshman, they told our parents that they were raising the next generation of women that would change the world. They just didn't mean black women. And so they didn't think that I should study engineering. Life changed for me when I went to A&T, because A&T convinced me that I could do anything. And that, in fact, I shouldn't try to not do everything. And I just believe that there's something that happens in a community of like-minded people. And so while not all of my siblings went to HBCU. Some of us did. My sister went to Princeton. And so but I just think that there's an opportunity. We do at NSBE have a Dean's Rounds table where we meet with all of the deans of ABET accredited schools. So when it comes to the engineering curriculum, we're working diligently, actually, Dr. Rochelle on our programs and membership team, working diligently to adjust and shift the curriculum in engineering so that there is more diversity in it. It's very similar to when they used to take SRA testing, and in Black communities they'd say, you know, Johnny was late for school today, what did he eat for breakfast? And Black kids are like, we don't eat breakfast, you know, we just go to school. And so we're trying to create more diversity in engineering so that we understand what it means to design empathetically, what it means to design for other cultures. I am a product engineer, so I've been on teams and I know what it's like to be in a room and we're designing and building a product and we're not thinking about any other culture. So we'd like to try and introduce that so that we can move that into all of the curriculums and it not just be in the world of HBCUs. But if you're not there, then I at least think it's really important to surround yourself with a tribe of people that will help you. The world of STEM is a very difficult place to maneuver, and if you're actually doing the work of STEM, hands to keyboard, designing and products and things like that, the impact that you can have will be game-changing, but there's a strong force to keep us from doing that. And I know that from my work at GE, my work at Wikipedia. I know that platform very well, and even now.
Okay, thank you for that sort of crazy question that I just asked.
Could I toss in one piece on that?
Yeah.
So as a father of two sons who both went to predominantly Caucasian universities, I'll put it that way because I looked at the roots of the universities and I knew where they were coming from. I also made sure that we surrounded them with a sense of a village raising them. So my brother went to Howard, so we made sure that as we talked and went to the football games at Howard, as well as going to the football games at Rutgers or going to the football games at University of Pennsylvania Wharton School, we always were aware of what the audience was, but also what they were getting from it. So where should you send your kids? Be aware of what their needs are and fill in the gaps. Do it as a village, do it with a spirit of compassion, but also with a spirit of conviction. So that's what I would toss in as a real quick hit on that.
Thank you so much. And that was really a question actually as a parent, which is something I think about a lot in terms of what schools.
I could chime in briefly. So, I mean, you know this, my wife and I, we have 6 children together. 4 of them are currently at HBCUs. We were fortunate enough or decided to make the sacrifices where we would homeschool our children so that we could indoctrinate them in their history and we could immerse them, because we don't talk a lot about it. I see so many woke folk that were educated and white, you know, and they woke because they still unlearning themselves. Right. And so if you don't have to unlearn and you can have a clearer path, and everybody's hacking at, you know, various levels. We get in as Black people really where our parents put us and where we can figure it out. But if, you know, I think as parents, we have to, and let me update, 4 went through HBCUs, 2 graduated, 1 is now working on her PhD in computer science at UPenn, and our oldest son is at Google as a software engineer. All of them went through coding boot camps, and our oldest daughter at 15 and son at 13 passed the Oracle Java certificate. Their instructor took it the same month and couldn't even pass it. And what it told us was not that, oh, mom and dad are great or they're exceptional, is that we're counting our young people out too soon. We don't think because they have Calculus 3 that they can't learn R, right? No, our kids were full stack software developers.
All right.
Before they were introduced to computational thinking.
There you go.
And so I think we've got it kind of mixed up. It's like you got to pass this bar, you got to get by this, you got to get by that. But really these skills, these lifelong learning and these hacking skills, they could get before they leave high school if you as parents are committed. And so one, I think making sure that they are immersed in their history, past and present, making sure that they get technical skills as early as possible and being willing to make that investment on their behalf, and then also getting them involved in policy as early as possible. You know, we used to take our children to meetings where we were sitting around the table and talking to congressional leaders and senators and and it gets into their consciousness, right? So when they get to undergraduate, we don't have to tell them to register to vote. They send us, like they've already done it. So I think parents, we also push raising our children on public or private school. You gotta raise your children at home, and their education should be complemented at school.
Yeah, I love
Indeed.
that.
Indeed.
Yeah, thank you, Rodney. So how much progress has been made? You've all been in the, at grassroots level, actually doing the hard work on the ground. How much progress have we made? And at the same time, another question I'm going to throw in as well, and what do you see as the biggest challenge? So how much have we made progress?
I mean, we've definitely made progress, but I can certainly say that the founders of NSBE in 1975, the reason they started the organization are actually the same reasons we need to exist today. So there's a consistency in what it means to be diverse and to be Black and to be in tech. But we're graduating more students than ever. We certainly saw declines in 2020, 21, as most did. Studying engineering remotely is a very, very difficult thing, and particularly not having your community of people to work with. We're continuing to increase in graduates. Our largest communities in NSBE are mechanical engineers and computer science engineers. So we're definitely putting people out into the space. We are definitely seeing our numbers decrease tremendously in terms of how many people stay in the workplace. So we are still graduating in the 23% percentage. We make up like 9% of the workforce. So we're doing a lot of entrepreneurial and independent things now, not the traditional work like we did when I graduated. And that's definitely a problem, but we're definitely graduating more. The amount of money that it costs for them to graduate and the debt that they're in afterwards is still a huge barrier to entry. They need these jobs to pay for the education. So there's a consistency. Then we go for our master's, we get our PhD, and the debt that's racked up is still heavy. But we are certainly, the fact that people will still say, I'm not sure how to create a diverse engineering team, and I say hire Black people, and they're like, well, where are they? I'm literally like, they're sitting right next to you. Or they're in school about to graduate, you should go and visit their campus and meet them, because they do exist.
Of course, and I do sometimes think that whole pipeline issue conversation is sometimes convenient for certain people. I think, Rodney or Timothy, do you want to add anything? We're going to start, take some questions in a minute.
I know that
add a quick point.
Quick point. I know that the throughput of Black students going through HBCUs toward an engineering degree is a much higher throughput than it is at a student going through, say, an LSU, because there's more continuity, there's more support, and there's more of a certain positive mindset. People are applauding you as you're going down the course. So that has to mean something.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think it's important that we really kind of remove a lot of emotion out of this and look at the data. And I think when we look at the data, I think HBCUs are doing an incredible job. Today they're graduating, under 500 engineers a year, collectively, all of them. So we need to figure out how can we get thousands of engineers. Like imagine growing up wanting the Black experience, but also wanting the engineering experience, and you can get that at an HBCU, and there's gonna be a job, there's gonna be a PhD program, or there's gonna be an entrepreneurial pathway, for you. I'll talk briefly about just through, our lens. Harlem Capital releases an annual report on the number of Black-owned firms that have raised over $1 million in venture capital. To date, there are about 1,000 of us that have ever done it. That's been documented. Collectively, we've raised about $6 billion over the lifespan of those organizations. But when you look at the last 30 years of fundraising for Black firms, there was nearly $300 billion invested in just 1 year. and that was last year. And so we are living in sort of like this outlier world, and I think we drink a lot of our own Kool-Aid because we're hanging out, in these insulated circles. But when you look at it, we still got so much work today. Not that we shouldn't celebrate those successes. And I like to give an example that, for us, entrepreneurship was a path to multi-generational wealth creation. It wasn't a side hustle because I couldn't get a job. And so I think we're looking at it differently. We should be looking at it differently. I think about Savitri Wilson in New Orleans, who we invested in through Fearless Fund, just raised $35 million and employs 100 people in New Orleans today. We didn't have to have a conversation with Savitri about hiring Black people, right?
Oh, she's a
and so if we can get more capital to Black entrepreneurs at scale, then we don't have to have, these conversations in majority white spaces just to get crumbs, and then when that person leaves, we start all over again. We keep starting over. And so I would like to see us shift the conversation to the startup ecosystem where we can get more Black people working in these high growth companies. One last story, Toya East, she works at GitHub. Toya called me when she was getting interviewed for the job. And she doesn't have a college degree, but she has skills. She had an opportunity to go to Microsoft or to go to GitHub. Now at the family picnic, nobody knew what GitHub was, and Microsoft had a little status that came with it. Well, if she had gone with the status, she wouldn't have got the GitHub stock. When Microsoft bought GitHub, Toya tells me, she says, I don't have to work for the next decade if I don't want to because of the money I got from the acquisition. And my daughter's college is already paid for, right? She is an archetype of where we should be spending our time and resources and thinking, and it's really in the high growth company building space rather than just the corporate tech space.
Yeah, I love that. And we're going to do questions in a minute, but I just want to sort of add to what you said. Savitri Wilson is amazing. If anyone's launching a non-profit or does anything in that kind of field, definitely work with her company. We've recently launched a non-profit and we work with her company, and I'm telling you, excellence on every single level. Absolute excellence, amazing experience. So
it's called Resilia.
Yeah, Resilia. Just want to build, because that whole thing about Black companies, this was excellent experience. I just want to say that. So anyway, with that being said, we have a couple of more minutes left. So for questions, so has anyone got any questions, and is there a microphone anywhere?
Hi, thank you very much for your talk. I have nieces and nephews in college, so this resonates with me a lot. So my question is, you talked about racking up debt, and a lot of the challenge is the cost of tertiary education in America. So this is a twofold question. Can you talk about maybe funding resources for persons trying to get into the pipeline by attending college full stop, one? And two, how much are foreign degrees valued now in the workplace? Because I know a couple of decades ago they weren't. Specifically, if you're from the Caribbean, like Jamaica, where I'm from, the cost of tertiary education is not as price prohibitive as it is in the US, and you have a lot of persons in the Caribbean matriculating but wanting to be employed in the United States. So can you address the funding scholarships here outside of college funding, and also getting resources from the Caribbean who would be just as viable in the workplace?
I found a very valuable way for you to get a good crosswalk and expedite, I should even say accelerate that transition, and that is through doing partnerships with domestic and international projects. So some of the things that I do on my personal enterprise, as well as what I try to gear some of our BDPA consultants to do, is to look at things at an international scale. So look at international opportunities for collaboration, and then that way you're already adding value and demonstrating what your skill set is prior to just coming in and saying, here's my resume, you know nothing else about me. Build a presence with that. So I think that that's one thing you might want to consider. In terms of the other piece, if someone else would like to address it.
We have millions of dollars in scholarships that come through NSBE, and I just I think we just awarded about 700,000. And the reason that's not a good number is because I still have over 2 million that I need to deliver. And that is because people are not completing the applications.
Right.
They're not filling them out. Their parents are doing it. That can't happen. If you're a student in school, you have to complete it. And so we have to have the students be accountable for their education and the willingness to use some of this funding to pay for it. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say that Monday, October 31st, is the day that the public student loan forgiveness deadline is due. If you have not completed that, if you have questions, we can talk about it, but please go into studentaid.gov and complete that. And then the second round of debt forgiveness will be by December. This is critical for wealth and legacy as well. We have to get out of debt so that then we're creating this new wealth, just like we're doing in various ways. Amen. But the way you have to do that is to any of you, your parents, your aunts, your cousins, whoever has a loan that's in debt, please take advantage of the White House funding that can help that happen.
Our children use the Scholly app, which was founded by Chris, a black founder. So download the Scholly app, pay $2.99 a month, and go at it. If you're also looking at alternative education like boot camps or certificates, a lot of them, depending on how they're funding, if they're funded by workforce or, millions of dollars of resources also went to a lot of boot camps as well. There are now lending institutions specific for coding boot camps as well. So there are also income sharing agreements, which are getting better. I think of Corey Shaw in Atlanta, who, when he came, he had withdrawn from Morehouse because of financial reasons. He was working as a janitor. He got admitted into our program. He finished and got a job as a programmer working on an NIH grant at Emory. And because Emory had a cooperative with Morehouse, he ended up being able to go finish his Morehouse education for free. And then he finished in 2019, which was the year that Robert Smith paid off all of their debt. And so, education is not always like this. Sometimes you go get a skill, you go get a job, you come back. You should be, education should be lifelong, right? And so it may not be A to Z. You might got to skip around to get there.
Okay, thank you so much. I think, we've got time for one quick question and some very quick responses, and then that's it. Hopefully,
on the front row.
Sounds good.
Our panelists may be around to have a chat after. So one question.
Thank you. Nice to meet you all. This
Likewise.
has been very informative. It's like drinking from a very delicious fire hydrant. So I want to be instrumental in helping create some of those pathways from the public perspective. I was in nursing for 13 years, and now I've transitioned into the tech field, and I'm seeing, as someone who's adopting tech as a second sort of career, some of the interesting deficiencies that might not be thought of. Yeah. You have a very specific engineering background and things of that nature. So in thinking of creating pathways for people who are entering this field as a second career, or they don't have any technical skills, but helping them get those skills, what are some initiatives or things that you have in the works for that?
I mean, most of those 500 learners that I talked about who graduated through OHUB, and OHUB partners with boot camps around the country, most of them had their undergraduate masters. We even had some lawyers who wanted to be software engineers. And so the boot camp pathway, even if you got a good job and you want to upskill and add something, go get a cybersecurity certificate. We have a cybersecurity initiative right now at opportunityhub.co/cyber, a partnership with IBM Skills Build. They have over 14,000 free badges, certificates, powered by Udemy, powered by OHUB. So just keep stacking the skills. And then once you get that cert, add it to your LinkedIn, and it just keeps building and building from there.
Yeah,
Okay, that's
Agreed.
I will go a step further. So I'm a former vice chair for physician education for Mayo Clinic. And one of the things I used to always tell the doctors was, I'm trying to help you to learn to be more innovative as you do your work. So we would also do crosswalks. And if you're in one industry, find out what that industry calls that activity, and then find out what the other industry calls that same activity. List that and keep it updated. But then likewise, as you both have said, those credentials, et cetera, build those up. Because if you just go for something as basic as Six Sigma white belt and yellow belt and all that, some of that stuff you can get for free. Get it rolling. Start getting it on your resume. gain momentum, but get it out there and get that walk crossed. But you can do it, and there's a lot of people out there who will help you do it. I can do a side conversation with you if you like.
Perfect. I would love that.
Cool.
Okay, I think, do you
No, I
have
think
any
I'm good.
comments? Are you fine? Okay.
No, I'm agreeing with
Okay, everyone, thank you so much. And I really thank our panelists, particularly the great work that they're doing in
Thank you.
supporting young black technologists. Thank you so much.